Good morning, Broncos country. Welcome in to Good Morning Broncos, a daily morning digital show here, part of Mile High Sports. If you're watching on YouTube, please do us a favor, hit that subscribe button down below so you never miss out on Broncos conversations. Make sure you sit down wherever you're at, you pull up a chair, you grab a cup of coffee. We're going to break down all things Denver Broncos. Training camp continues, and yesterday at the Centura Health Training Center, it was day 6 overall of Broncos practice, the second day in pads. I'm Cody Rourke, Broncos reporter from Mile High Sports. Today's show, though, I have a special guest. We're jam-packed here today. We're breaking down yesterday's practice. I've got my good friend Kim Becker. She does a lot of stuff for us here, digital. I mean, she's a Swiss Army knife when we talk about media. And she also has really funny blooper reels that you can find on YouTube or you can find on Instagram from her time at Arizona as a sideline reporter. Kim, thanks for joining me here today.
Hey, I've also got some blooper reels from my time here in Denver doing some work with altitude and betting, because to be able to figure out all that betting lingo and talk numbers over and over and making sure you're talking about the guys, it took me a while to get used to that. So I've got some blooper reels for that one as well. But thank you for having me. I love being here. Very kind words that you spoke of me, Cody, but Denver Broncos are my favorite team to cover. So I'm honored to be sitting next to you today.
Kim and I have done some stuff together in the past with Locked On, but, it's cool we get to work together now at Mile High Sports. I mean, your observation being at training camp with me the past couple of days, what has been your general takeaway outside of how hot it's been?
Dude.
But the on-field stuff, what is something that's caught in your eye?
Well, first of all, I'm not going to complain about the heat because we were complaining about the rain all summer. So I'm now not going to complain about how hot it is because finally it feels like summer is here, even though summer is basically over. But I was not able to attend training camp the first few days, so I didn't see them practice outside of pads. However, I agree with head coach Sean Payton when he says you really don't see anything until the pads are on. He said that after practice yesterday at the podium. He said there were several guys that have really surprised him. They play differently. They look differently once you put pads on. So I think that that's something that I've really taken away, is that you do definitely see a different product when these guys have pads out there. Probably the biggest takeaways, we haven't seen a whole lot of red zone stuff, a lot of third down stuff. There was a ball swatted away, one of Russell Wilson's passes yesterday. So I know everybody was pretty high on Russell Wilson, saying that he looked really good. He looked better. I think he still does, but there's definitely some work to be done there. What I have really enjoyed is watching the different coaches, the different coordinators, the position coaches work with each position around the field. That was something that I've always really loved being up close and personal with, because you can see how much work goes into each position group. So overall, I haven't really paid attention to what this team really has product wise, but individually, it just looks like all of these position groups are really locked in, and I think it's exciting.
I mean, that's what Sean Payton wants. You talk about coaching. I mean, Sean Payton coaches his coaches. I think one thing too, in any program you go to, whether it's collegiate, high school, professional, it's about making sure that your coaches are carrying out the same message you are. And that's been the emphasis. You mentioned yesterday, obviously, they were in the third down period. It was a move the ball period. And the first team, second team, third team, I mean, they get a certain amount of reps before they move on to the next drill. This morning, we're probably going to get, as Sean Payton said, some red zone.
Mm-hmm.
That's where we want to see, because the Broncos' red zone offense was bad last year. Their third down offenses, which we watched obviously yesterday's practice, third down last year in the regular season, they were the worst in the NFL.
I was going to say, they're both bad.
So how does this play out? And look, I think this is also another takeaway. Every year, I mean, even with not just the Denver Broncos, there are other teams right now around the National Football League whose offenses are struggling against the defense. It's easier to install a defense than it is an offense. And unfortunately for the Broncos, this is their third offensive installation in the last 3 years. So there's things that, they're still piecing together, trying to master. And I think the main thing too, and I saw Sean Payton, he ripped them, first team unit, because they didn't come out of the huddle with tempo, or they didn't do it with enough urgency. He was mad. He snapped at him, made him do it again. You love to see that. There simply was not that here in Denver last year. So the theme has been the defense has really kind of been smothering the offense through the first week of padded practice. I think fans in attendance, they see that. And look, we got to talk about it. Russell Wilson yesterday in team period, he threw an interception to Justin Simmons. Now, I think that the thing where we're going to get the conversation is, Russ threw a pick. Who did he throw it to? The guy who led the NFL in picks last year. Justin Simmons is one of the best defensive players in the NFL at his position. And on that play specifically, he broke on the route intended for Courtland Sutton, jumped it perfectly. I mean, that's what Justin Simmons has done. This is also going to make Russell Wilson better overall in the long run. But yeah, Russ struggled yesterday in practice. I think it's fair to say that. But Is the sky falling right now, Kim?
No.
I don't think that should be the case.
I don't think they're worried about that, and I think if you listen to what head coach Sean Payton says after these practices, he's not worried about those tiny little details right now or what's going on with Russell Wilson. It's a team collaborative effort right now. Like you said, the installation process, they're just trying to figure out what's going on out there as a unit. So I think that is definitely something to watch. One thing I do want to ask you about though, I was listening to NFL Network the other day and they said something about the Denver Broncos defense needs to be better so that it can match like what they're trying to do on offense. I was like, did they not remember how good the Denver Broncos defense was last year? I know it was overshadowed by how bad the offense was, but the defense is a great, great unit. So, like you said, seeing Justin Simmons make that interception, I think we should be very glad that we have some defensive players like Justin Simmons.
100% too. And it's wild because, the defense at times last season regressed. It wasn't because of performance. I mean, think of
They're
how many
tired.
injuries happened. Great point there. How long they were on the field. Like they would get a stop. They'd force the opposing team's offense to punt or they'd get a takeaway. And then Denver's offense would go 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out. I mean, sustainably, you look at it overall, Denver's defense was really good. They have a lot of carryover, a lot of same guys returning. They lost a couple of guys, but new additions as well. Zach Allen yesterday was very impressive, high motor, relentless, as Sean Payton said in his post practice press conference. But for me, I think we have to take a look back at yesterday. So, Broncos country, here is our day 6 Broncos recap that I shot and put together for Mile High Sports from yesterday. Check it out. Day 6 of Denver Broncos training camp here at the Centura Health Training Center. It is day 2 of full pads. Day 6 overall is the build-up for the first preseason game next week against the Arizona Cardinals. Now you have to build up. It's an acclimation period when you throw on the pads. These guys have to get ingrained with physical contact. Obviously, the news of Tim Patrick yesterday sucked the wind out of the sails of Broncos country, but that means other people step up. I'm Cody Rourke, Broncos reporter from Mile High Sports, and first takeaway that we're going to talk about, the defense on day 2 of padded practice was swarming against the offense. A lot of pressure coming from guys like Jonathan Cooper, Nick Bonito, Zach Allen, key offseason acquisition in NFL free agency, generated a lot of pressure. Got his hand on a pass at the line of scrimmage there as the offense struggled. Then Justin Simmons, the all-pro safety as we all know it, jumped a route in practice in one of the team periods, intercepted Russell Wilson. The defense has an advantage here early on in training camp, but let's get to our second takeaway, and I think this is the most important thing. Sean Payton talked about it post-practice here today. Other guys have to step up after Tim Patrick's injury, after KJ Hamler's medical condition. Keep an eye on Brandon Johnson, who was an undrafted rookie free agent wide receiver last year. He talked about what he's been doing. He's stepping up. He's picking up the new terminology and the playbook, and he's playing in that role that Tim Patrick played in the offseason as well. So those are your things that you need to keep an eye on here at Broncos camp. Tomorrow's another day. Pads on once again. We'll have you covered here, Mile High Sports. A lot of takeaways there from day 6, day 2 of pads. Today will be day 7 of Broncos training camp, day 3 of pads. So you expect the intensity to wrap up, but we talked about it there as well. A couple of days ago, just Tim Patrick's injury. Brutal, brutal loss for the Broncos, their wide receiving core. And as unfortunate as it is, we know the business side of the NFL is always the next man up. Who's going to step up? And that has been Brandon Johnson, undrafted rookie, free agent wide receiver last year out of UCF. He was a preseason star, but then he got hurt, and then they released him with an injury settlement. They brought him back on the practice squad last year. It's unfortunate that these injuries happen, but one thing I did notice, Kim, with Brandon Johnson during OTAs, during minicamp, is Tim was ramping up and starting to do a little bit more. Brandon Johnson was picking things up. He was
Yeah.
in Tim Patrick's role there. So that is something to monitor. And Sean Payton gave him some praise after practice yesterday, talking about, he's a guy who's picked up the playbook. He's done a really good job with it. This is where we always say you can't replace Tim Patrick's production, but you can supplement it with other players.
Well, and that is why these second string, third string guys are so important. Everybody on the roster is so important. You can speak to that being a player yourself. I spent a lot of time really up close and personal with a lot of football players in my past, and they have to be locked in no matter what position you are, no matter if you're a starter, second string, third string, whatever it may be. You have to be locked in because you guys understand that at any moment, your time to shine might be there. And so I love that Brandon Johnson is out there being locked in behind Tim Patrick. He knew, and it wasn't because they're thinking in their head, I'm sure you can speak to this, oh, this guy's going to get hurt, I'm going to step in. It's because they're learning so much all the time. The amount of meetings you guys go through, the amount of film you guys watch, the amount of talks you have with your coaches. I mean, it is 100% 24/7. You are eating, breathing, sleeping football, and you have to if you're going to play at this level, especially in this sport with the physicality of it, the mentality of it. Sports psychology is a huge factor when it comes to professional sports, especially football. So I think he has to be locked in just mentally as well and physically because you just never know. And if you want your time, if you want to be able, you have to be prepared for your time, I guess is what I should say. It's not like you get your time and you
Yeah.
prove to people. You prove it to the coaches and to the staff and to everybody watching you that you are prepared and ready before your time comes.
Well, that actually leads us into our next portion. We actually had a one-on-one interview yesterday with Broncos cornerback Jaquan McMillan, a guy who was on the practice squad all last season, was in training camp with the team. But the thing that stood out to me when interviewing him one-on-one, we talked about preparation. He even noted himself that even though he was not on the active roster, he prepared. He was in his notebook watching film. He took notes as if he was going to play. And then last year, week 18, he stepped up against the Los Angeles Chargers in the regular season finale. Here's our exclusive one-on-one interview we had with Jaquan McMillan yesterday following practice. Denver, what's kind of been the biggest difference in your opinion coming in last year, undrafted guy with a lot of honors? I mean, obviously where you played college ball at as an All-American. And then what's the difference between it now coming into this year?
Just a lot more confidence. I got a year under my belt, so I learned from my older guys, and I'm just using what I learned and try to use it to my best advantage on the field. But yeah, like I said, I'm just more confident now. I learned a lot, more familiar just with the speed of the game now, and that's about it. Just more confidence. I want to go put some work in the off season. Hey, and we back.
Last year, throughout the entire season, practice squad, you were able to be in the locker room, be in meetings. I talked to Christian Parker a little bit earlier this offseason. He told me, he said, we know everything coming out, about J-Mac, how he prepares. And you carried it over because week 18, you got your first NFL start. At first, a lot of people were like, who's number 35? How does he make these plays? For you, what was that moment like stepping into that role and then going out there and making plays and turning heads and building on something coming into this year?
Man, it's unbelievable feeling just to go out there, just to have an opportunity to be here is always great. Be here every day, but just the way I prepare, right? Come out here each and every day, even though I was on practice squad, just trying to get better each and every day. In the meeting room, a lot of guys, if you're not on the 53, they're not really trying to work or pay attention. I stayed in tune with everything. Shoot, I was still doing scouting reports. Even though I knew I wasn't playing, I was still doing scouting reports, still studying film, still talking with the older guys, asking them questions. And then when my time was here, I was ready.
I mean, it's one of those things where opportunity and preparation kind of meet, and not really a surprise, but looking at your game, I watch a lot of film. I'm a former corner, so for me, I'm always studying tape. Technician, true to the game. It seems like you hone in on the little details, whether it's your footwork, understanding how to weave in coverage against different types of receivers. How does that give you a benefit now, especially being in a room with guys like Pat?
Right. Just, man, when you the fundamentals, when you play off your fundamentals and your technique, it makes the game a lot slower, a lot easier. It's harder because I've been through games where in college where I didn't play with the technique, but I got away with it just because it's college. Now it's a little bit harder. You got people bigger, faster, stronger, so you have to play with technique. And I just learned from Pat. Pat is the most technical guy I know. Like every play, it looked the same. No matter what play it is, he always looked the same. Whether it's the pierce step, where his eyes need to be. So I just focus on them things, and them things come in handy when you're playing against better players.
For you, what was that moment like? Because you played that Week 18 game, and then it's like you have momentum. You got robbed of an interception, by the way. That was ridiculous. But from that, it's like, oh, dang, we have a game now. I got an entire offseason. I mean, I'm sure you're excited for next week, first preseason game coming up.
Yeah. So obviously that game gave me a tremendous confidence boost. So when I'm going into off season, I knew I needed to put some weight on. I had dropped a lot of weight going towards the end of the season. So I went in the weight room, trained, went down to Fort Lauderdale, got my speed right, trained with technique, just technique-wise, got faster, bigger, stronger, and that was it. And just came back a different person.
Oh, man, well, even though you got bigger, you still move really well laterally. You still got that explosiveness. So, hey, we're very excited about this upcoming season, man. But thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, guys.
And you look at the Broncos cornerback depth, Kim, for this team specifically, you have Patrick Surtain, you have Damari Mathis entering year number 2. Jaquan McMillan is a guy who, in my opinion, based on his trajectory right now, he's in line to become that key backup behind either one of those two guys. And it's crazy because he was an All-American and he had so many takeaways when he's playing college ball. And now you see him coming into the NFL and just his confidence that he has in himself. I mean, he even said it there in the one-on-one. He trained this offseason, he got bigger, put on more muscle, but he still has his athleticism. And I watch him, and he's got great technique, attention to detail. Defensive backs coach Christian Parker returning to the mix here. You need continuity in a sense there. And for him, it was kind of a catch 22 because played in the last game of the regular season. It's like, oh, I had a really good moment. Now I have to wait all year in order to get back out on the field again. To me, I could tell you as a player, that would have driven me nuts. So he used that to motivate him. And he could be a guy to watch here in the preseason. I'm telling Broncos fans, keep an eye on number 35.
That's good. That's what we want to hear right now. What guys do we need to keep an eye on and what guys do we need to watch? But what better player than Pat Surtain to be learning from and following? I mean, hearing Pat Surtain speak after day 5 too. I mean, he is just so eloquent. I am so shocked at the maturity that comes out of him. I mean, you see it on the field, of course. We were all blown away by how he's played for this team, but to see him in person, and that was my first time hearing him talk in person, up close and personal. I mean, I think that's something that I really like to pay attention to also is how these guys show up in front of the media and how they represent their team and their other peers and their teammates, but he blew me away. He was very, very well spoken, spoke very highly of his teammates, and he just had the right answer, it seemed, to all of the
Yeah.
questions. So I think he's a fantastic mentor to some of these guys.
He carries himself like a true pro. And we have some really, really exciting things. Can't quite tell you yet what it is, but it does involve Patrick Surtain, Mile High Sports. Stay tuned for that
Amazing.
here in the coming weeks. We'll do a little bit of a really cool insight and reveal for you here in Broncos country. But kind of going through some final news and notes from day 6 of Broncos camp as we prepare for day 7 this morning. If you're out there, Broncos country, and you see us, come say hi. Like, we love to interact with fans, but we're not going to be able to do it. We can't go and find fans. You know how many people are out there? Because like I try to
I was like,
recognize
does nobody
people.
work?
I know, right?
Okay, it's a weekday.
summertime.
Side note, it's summertime. What? Everyone's a teacher? What, Cody? That makes no sense.
Well, I mean,
Why
I
is no
used
one
to be a
working?
teacher, so
Oh.
it was, we love summer vacation. Summer vacation is
Clearly, every industry
is our
does.
good thing. But yeah, I mean, there's so many people out there, and obviously a few people have come up. But yeah, I don't have time to. I don't recognize everybody, and so if I see someone I recognize, obviously I stop. But hey, if you see us, like, come say hi. We love interacting with you. If you take time to listen to us, to read our work, it means the world to us. So we owe that time to give it back to you as well in terms of that. But some final news and notes, observations from practice. Obviously, no Riley Moss yesterday here once again for the Broncos. We'll see if he's back there today. Frank Clark was absent a couple of days ago, on day 5 of Broncos camp. He made it back. He was wearing the bucket hat, but he still did some individual work here for the Broncos. Curious, we don't know what's going on with Riley Moss. We'll find out. Sean Payton said, when we want you to know, we'll let you know, which is, hey, I respect it. I understand it. You don't want to let certain
Yeah.
things get out. But I hope everything is okay with Riley Moss. Aside from that, Denver continuing to make some moves. Nick Williams, who has been on the team a couple of times before getting waived to make room for other players. He was back on the roster yesterday for the Broncos. And then they signed Fabian Moreau, a cornerback, yesterday as well. So he'll be out on the practice field here today in Broncos camp. An injury or a couple injury updates. We don't necessarily know much, but Quinn Miners left practice a little bit yesterday. Sean Payton said post-practice he's going to be fine. But Jonas Griffith, inside linebacker who suffered a foot injury last year that forced him to miss the remainder of the season, he came up hobbling a little bit after a special teams drill. He had to be walked off the field with trainers. So we'll wait to find out a little bit more of an update on that. But obviously that impacts Denver's inside linebacker depth. And then once again, just Jaleel McLaughlin, the
Mhm.
undrafted rookie free agent running back, continuing to have some explosive plays there. Pass rush has been good. Pressure's been good for the Broncos defense. And I think we should talk about it. Russell Wilson had a terrific throw to Cortland Sutton,
Yeah.
who mossed Patrick Surtain and mossed Justin Simmons on one play down the left sideline. That was the best play so far that we've seen from the Broncos offense there. And then Jarrett Stidham, backup
Yeah.
quarterback, delivering a dime to Montreal Washington in yesterday's practice, who got behind the entire defense. You love to see that. But once again, Stidham building off of a pretty impressive camp. Can Russell Wilson, the Broncos offense, bounce back today? That's the big question. Kim and I will have you covered Mile High Sports. But Kim, I appreciate you joining me here today and look forward to doing this a little bit more going forward. And I have a feeling Broncos fans are going to see you quite often. So we're looking forward to our coverage here at Mile High Sports. Make sure you check out Kim Becker as well on social media. But Broncos country, thanks for rocking with us here today. Good morning, Broncos. We'll see you out there at Broncos camp.